Jay here for Stretford, Paddock. This is the Paper Talk. I'm in the studio. We are live. You know what to do by now. There's plenty of Manchester United stories to get through. So I want you lot to get involved and join in with the comments and the chat and let us know what you think about all of them. And we're going to try and find some positive news, right? Because it does feel a bit doom and gloomy at the minute, doesn't it? It feels just like every United story, every United result, anything you hear, read, see or feel about Manchester United Football Club is just a bit depressing. I don't know. I feel about guilty coming on here on like a Thursday. It is Thursday today, isn't it? Thursday morning and spreading more bad cheer. So we'll get into it anyway. I'm not going to make news up, but we'll see what stories we've got. We've got a little bit about Sergio Reguilon, which hopefully could be a little bit more positive. January transfer stories, what's going on there? We've got a few of them. The pressure on Ten Hag, is he under serious pressure? What's going on? Also, this whole idea of Ten Hag's approach to players. There's a couple of stories I want to get into. And as you might have seen from the thumbnail, there's like this story doing the rounds that Ten Hag is reluctant to shout at some of the players and feels they can't handle it, which, listen, I understand we live in a different era from the Sir Alex Ferguson one of kicking football boots at people and chucking cups of tea everywhere, but we'll get into all that. So make sure you are hitting that like button, hitting that subscribe button if you're not doing already, and hitting that share button. Big Bud, Lee Elliott, Ross Murphy, Brian Casey, Dave Rowbottom, James Kelland, Linda Revel, Vladimir Topolov, Grayson, Red Manchester, loads of people in the chat. Forgive me if I missed some of you out there. Thanks for everyone who's getting involved. Right, let's start with Sergio Reguilon. Reguilon update. You can see it here from Manchester Evening News. It says Manchester United will reassess the risk element. There's one statement you don't hear every day. Reassess the risk element of Sergio Reguilon's muscular injury ahead of the home game against Brentford on Saturday. United have provisionally planned to prepare Reguilon for their weekend fixture, and the need for a specialist left-back has become more urgent after two successive home defeats. Amrabat has been filling in there. Listen, Amrabat, he was doing all right, wasn't he? And then it all went pear-shaped towards the end of the Galatasaray game, and I think it was his header that led to the third goal, although he wasn't the only one at fault for it. We need a left-back. It's just so frustrating that Sergio Reguilon has come in, done quite well, and then got injured. I mean, to lose three left-backs in the space of a month, whatever it's been, or 2 months, is just ridiculous. And you lose Luke Shaw, you've already lost Tyrone Malacia, you bring in someone, and he lasts, 3 games, and then he's injured. It's just unbelievable. And I know it's not his fault. You can't help it if he's injured. It's just really, really frustrating from a Manchester United point of view, because then you're having to move more players around. Amrabat, I would like to see in the midfield. I'd like to see him helping out Casemiro. I don't think he's a terrible left-back. I think he's all right, and I think he was actually doing okay against Galatasaray until the latter bits of the game. He probably ran out a bit of steam as well, because obviously we went down to 10 men and the pressure was mounting. But yeah, it's just really, really annoying and frustrating. Jim Max says, morning, Jay. Stephanie Griffiths says, 21 likes. That is a disgrace. Hit that like button, please, people. Come on. Matt Ledbetter, or Lee Beater, got there in the end. Sorry, Matt. Says, the news feels better coming from you, Jay. Thanks. BMW Racing 1974 says, yes, it's Thursday, the third day of the week. Yes. Monday, one day. Tuesday, Wednesday, what day? Thursday, the third day. I know the reference. Right, let's talk about the January transfer window, because it looks like we're already heading towards that, or looking at that as our hope and saviour. Well, don't get too excited, because according to Football Insider here, being reported in the Manchester Evening News, United will have to sell before they can buy if they want to strengthen their ranks in the January transfer window. This doesn't surprise me, if I'm being brutally honest. It's claimed by the same news outlet that manager Erik Ten Hag will aim to sign a central midfielder and a winger in the mid-table or the mid-season window. Now, last season in the January transfer window, I was filled with rage, at what happened, because Manchester United, going into that January transfer window, we'd had a World Cup, or we were having a World Cup. We were fighting on 4 fronts. We were fighting for top 4. I mean, we were about 9 or 10 points away from Arsenal at the top of the table. It wasn't realistic that we were going to have a title challenge, but certainly the top 4 race was on. We were in the Carabao Cup, last stage of the Carabao Cup. The FA Cup was still to come, and we were in the Europa League. So you're fighting on 4 fronts. You know you're missing players. Cristiano Ronaldo had left. You're missing your top scorer from the previous season. You've got injuries. You need reinforcements. And the board just said to Erik Ten Hag, we're not going to give you any money. If you want to buy players, you're going to have to get them on loan or on a free, which is what he did. He brought in Wout Weghorst on loan from Burnley. He wasn't even at Burnley, he was at Besiktas. Burnley didn't even want him, they'd loaned him to Besiktas. I'm not hating on Wout Weghorst, but let's be realistic about the standards that he's got and where we were at as a football club. Then we had Marcel Sabitzer, another loan signing, a decent one, to be honest with you. Came in from Bayern Munich, but what happens? He gets injured. And it's kind of a running trait with Manchester United. You know, we get these loanees in, or we have to make do because we haven't got any more money, and some of them do okay, some of them don't do that well. The fact that we brought in Wout Weghorst in the January transfer window, he played a lot of games and didn't get a single Premier League goal, speaks volumes. And he did have some good games. I'm not just saying he didn't. Thought he was very useful in the Carabao Cup, played well in the Carabao Cup final, for example. But you want a player who can come in and weigh in with goals as a striker. You want a midfielder who can come in and not break down, because I'm not saying it's related, but he's not played a lot of football. He played some football with Bayern Munich, but then he gets injured for us. And it's just so deflating again. And this is what we're looking at in January. It's like if Erik Ten Hag wants to bring in reinforcements, he's got to bring in free transfers, or he's got to sell players. Now, the flip side to that is we have got players to sell. Scott McTominay seems like an obvious one. Harry Maguire, another one. And if I was Erik Ten Hag, Jadon Sancho, I'd just be getting rid of him. I would. I'd just be saying, look, you're going, or you're in the resis. Like, we need to sell you, I'm sorry, but we need to move you on. And even if we have to take a financial hit on all of them, I know Scott McTominay came through the academy, so how can you take a financial hit on an academy player? But even if we have to just get rid of him at a cut price, do it. We need to bring in players in January that Erik Ten Hag can trust. He obviously can't trust, or feels like he can't trust, Harry Maguire. Even with the defensive merry-go-round we've seen, Harry Maguire doesn't really feel like he's starting, does it, for Manchester United? I know he does get games. He played in the Carabao Cup, but Erik Ten Hag just doesn't fancy him. It's obvious. Scott McTominay is another one. We've done everything we can to get midfielders in there ahead of Scott McTominay this season. Sofian Amrabat has come in. Hannibal, who's, 6 years younger than Scott McTominay, far more inexperienced. He starts over him now. Even Donny van de Beek's getting games. Like, let's be realistic. Scott McTominay is surplus to requirements. And Jadon Sancho, at the moment, is training on his own. That's how well his career's going at Manchester United. He's fallen out of the manager. There's obviously not a future there for me. He's got to go. We heard reports that Dortmund are interested in him in January. Then sell him. Get rid of all these players. Just move them on. If you want players, you ought to bring in players that can do a job for you, because at the moment, them three can't do anything for you, really. Then bring in players. So, yeah, just move them on. It just annoys me that it's always this sort of feeling that we're going into the January transfer window of, we haven't got any money, you've got to make do. Because I think United should always have money. We should always be able to spend. We should always be able to bring in reinforcements, especially when, as there was the case last season, you're going into January and you're looking at it and you're going, okay, look, now I'm on four. I didn't know I was going to be fighting on four fronts. We didn't know we were going to get to where we got to in the Carabao. We didn't know what was going to happen in Europe. We didn't know what was going to happen in the Premier League or whatever. You realise that in January, this is where we're at. You realise you've lost your top scorer in Cristiano Ronaldo. You need to bring someone in to replace him. And the best you can do is just to go and get Wout Weghorst and then move Marcus Rashford to a position that doesn't really suit him. Anthony Martial as well was constantly injured. It was just really shambolic last season for Manchester United, and I hope we do better this January, but I'm not holding my breath. Paul Gill, who's been a member of the academy for 11 months, says, "Morning, Jay. Rough time for the club at the minute, but these are the times where we have to stick with the manager and the players. Like the video, people. Let's hit that like button, please. You might not like what's going on at Manchester United, but you can hit the like button. Smash a like, as they say. Let's get to 200 likes. Yeah, I understand that. Listen, I'm all for Erik Ten Hag. I think he's a good manager. I think he's going through a difficult period, and we do need to back him, and I hope the board back him. That's my main concern. I said this after the Galatasaray game. I'm not looking to get rid of Erik Ten Hag. I know it's my decision, but I don't think it's time to say, get a new manager in, get rid of this manager. It's not working out. I think you need to stick with him. My concern is, will the board stick with him? This board are trigger happy. We do get rid of managers. We do. Jose Mourinho finished second within, 6 months, was it? He was sacked. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer finished second, got to a European final within, I think again, within 5 or 6 months, he was sacked. Louis van Gaal won the FA Cup within half an hour. He'd been sacked. I know that decision had probably been made before that, but you get my point. This board don't linger when it comes to managers not succeeding. David Moyes, who was brought in on a 6-year contract, the moment it became mathematically impossible for United to get top 4, he was sacked. Almost that minute. The Everton game, that did for that, and then he was sacked, I think, a few hours later, and he found out on Twitter. So this board will pull the trigger if things are going wrong, and I think with Erik Ten Hag, We need to have a different approach. We need to stick with him. A lot of people have been bringing up, and I've done it myself, about what happened with Sir Alex Ferguson in 1989. The fact was we had a very good first season, a full first season under him. Second season, we were struggling. And people were going, look, this isn't working. You remember the Pete Molyneux banner, or you've seen the picture of the Pete Molyneux banner, 3 years of excuses and it's still crap. Sarah Fergie, everyone thought he was going to go. We stuck with him and he went on to become the most successful manager in the history of English football. Now you look at Mikel Arteta, if you want to use a reference that's a little bit more recent. Mikel Arteta, a bit similar to Eric Ten Hag, won a trophy in his first season, or his first half of season, I think it was, when he just come in. Won the FA Cup with Arsenal, beating some big teams on the way as well to that victory. Second season, finishes 8th. Third season, 8th again. Now you look at that and you think, if he was United manager, would he have survived that? No, probably not. But look what's happening now with Mikel Arteta and Arsenal. It looks like they've got their act together. They've just finished second. They're doing well this season. You get the impression that Mikel Arteta has steadied the ship and the heading in the right direction, bringing through youngsters, making some signings that are working out. It looks like, tentatively, he's doing a good job at Arsenal. But they would have been well within their rights to get rid of him. Now you look at Jurgen Klopp is another one. I know it's slightly different with Jurgen Klopp because he has had success. He has won a Champions League. He has won a league title and an FA Cup and a League Cup with Liverpool. But he's had difficulties there. He's had seasons where they've been terrible. They were terrible last season. They've had to even when he first arrived, I think they didn't lose the first 3 finals. Now, admittedly, one of them was the Champions League final. So okay, at least we're getting to the final. But they lost the League Cup final to City. They lost the Europa League final. They were a bit up and down in the league. The board could have looked at him and gone, this guy, it's not quite working out, and got rid of him. They didn't. They stuck with him and they reaped the benefits. Even now when he has a bad season, they don't panic, which you can understand because of the success he's had there. My point being, Manchester United, with this manager, should stick with him. We should give him the time, the patience he needs to sort this out. That's what I'd like to see. I don't know if you will see that because I think this board panic. And I think the reason they panic a lot of the time is they don't want their attention or more attention on the owners. So when things start going wrong on the pitch, they change the manager because that diverts all the attention, so we've got a new manager. It's the same old playbook, and they like to do it as well before the January window. They've done that a few times. And you look at it when Jose was manager. People were sort of going, maybe we need to sign someone in January. He was a bit miffed because he hadn't been back properly in the transfer window. I think we brought in Fred, Diogo Dalot and Lee Grant in a summer where we just finished 19 points behind Manchester City, who in the meantime went out and broke their transfer record for Riyad Mahrez. It just shows you what he was up against. Now, I wasn't a massive fan of Jose towards the end. I think he had lost the plot a bit. But I understood his point of view where he felt like he wasn't being backed properly if he was going to challenge Manchester City. He's gone. Ollie comes in, doesn't buy anyone in January, isn't really given any funds in January. Fast forward a couple of years, it's a similar situation. I think it was Ralph Rangnick. He was saying how he wanted to bring in all these players. He wanted to bring in Alvarez or Vlahovic or whoever. Didn't bring anyone in January. There was a story doing the rounds, or a tweet doing the rounds I saw from Joe Tomlinson earlier, who presents on Sky. He's been on the channel as well, he's a big red. And he quoted, I think it was from Paul Hurst. Paul Hurst is it the Mail or the Telegraph? I always forget where he is. Anyway, he'd done a tweet a few years ago saying that United were offered Alvarez and said no. I mean, I know we get offered a lot of players, but it just shows out what we've missed out on. My point anyway is, digressing, we need to stick with this manager. I believe he's the right man for the job, and I think we need to stick with him. Let me know what you think. Do you think we will still think? I don't know why I said it like I was a Connie. Let us know what you think. Do you think we should stick with him? Do you think we will stick with him? That is the main question. Will this board stick with this manager? Over 100 likes, let's get to 200. Let's talk about Braithwaite. What's this one here? United considering Branthwaite, swoop. According to a report by the Daily Mail, United are considering making a January move for Everton defender Jarrad Branthwaite. The centre-back who spent last season on loan at PSV Eindhoven is being heavily linked with a move to Old Trafford after making an encouraging start to this season on Merseyside. City have also been linked with the former Blackburn Rovers loanee. Well, once City are linked with him, then we're definitely going to go for him, aren't we? Because we seem to love trying to get players that City are interested in. Don't know a lot about him. Obviously, he's been highly regarded. We do need reinforcements. Again, though, going back to the earlier story we were covering, it looks like United are going to have to sell to buy. So we're probably going to have to move someone on if we do want to bring in the kid. Harry Maguire going out, him coming in, makes sense. If he's an up-and-coming defender that could do a job for Manchester United, opposed to a defender who's been here for a while and is surplus to requirements. So if that is the deal that can be made there, where we sell Harry Maguire and bring in this kid, yeah, I'm all for it. Let us know what you think about everything. Red Manchester says, until we see the team he would want to pick, then give it time to work his system. We shouldn't be talking about sacking him. Liam Clark says, Ten Hag will never get the players at United to play how he wants in a way that works at Premier League level. He doesn't feel like he's the right man, I feel from that comment. Jim Mack says, we should stick with Eric Ten Hag, but I'm not convinced the club will. I agree with that. Adam says, we ain't got no money, it's just spin. We have got money, just the Glazers won't sanction spending. DR says, just on the Galatasaray game, I flew over from Vienna for the game. Playing back was full of away fans, all brought from season ticket holders on a ticket website, not from the club direct. What? Like, that's a nonsense. I'm sorry, DR, but I'm sure that not all the tickets there were sold by season ticket holders. A lot of the tickets, I mean, you know, maybe some of them were on your plane, I can't speak for that, but I know there's this story that the club are putting out there that all these Galatasaray fans got into the ground because they all bought tickets off season ticket holders. It's not the case. A lot of them bought them through the official channels on the club website. You could join membership, get a membership, and buy tickets, and that's what they did. That's why they all ended up sat together. Big blocks of Galatasaray fans. That's not all just buying season tickets or season ticket holders' tickets, if that makes sense. It's just a way for the club to demonise the fans. Let's talk about Eric Ten Hag and his pressure. Says here, this is ESPN. Sources close to Eric Ten Hag have told ESPN that he doesn't feel he can be as harsh in his criticism of the players as he'd like because there are concerns about the mental fragility of the squad. He's also raised the issue of having the right body language when setbacks happen in games, and he's increasingly frustrated that his message isn't getting through to particular members of his squad. We've heard about this a few times, about players just looking miffed during the game and heads dropping and it looks like they've given up and all this other stuff. And there's a few players that get accused of this. Marcus Rashford's always getting accused of it. Bruno's getting accused of not maybe letting his head drop, but maybe getting a little bit too giddy and losing the plot a little bit and losing his head. There's other players as well, you feel like if it's not going their way, they can come across like the sulking. That's one aspect to this, but the other aspect, which is a little bit disconcerting, is this idea that a manager can't criticise players or can't be too harsh with them, can't shout at them because he's worried about the mental fragility. Now listen, I sympathise with anyone who struggles with mental health or struggles with getting shouted at or treated a certain way. I get it, and I think it's a good thing that football has moved on from the days of screaming at people and hit the hairdryer. But I also think you've got to be able to take some criticism. You've got to be able to be shouted at if you are a player for Manchester United. You can see it here in the mirror. Eric Ten Hag's main concern about Man United squad means he's scared to criticise players. If you're playing for the biggest club in the world or one of the biggest clubs in the world, if you're playing in front of 76,000 fans, if you're at a club where anything you do will get scrutinised and analysed to a ridiculous degree, you have got to be able to take some criticism. It's just the nature of the beast. I'm sorry, but there is no two ways around it. There just isn't. Like, I wish there was. I wish you could play for Manchester United and not have to take criticism. But there isn't. If you're not performing and the team's not performing, you're going to get criticised. Now, I get there are limits. You shouldn't have to be abused. You shouldn't have to be threatened. You shouldn't have to have your family abused, which is what we've seen for Manchester United players. There's a David Beckham documentary out. And what happens to David Beckham in the 90s is unlike anything I've ever seen before or since, thank God. We had effigies hanging of lampposts of him. We had a national newspaper putting his picture on a dartboard and encouraging people to throw darts at it. We had fans saying horrible things about him and his family constantly, every game you went to. It was minging. Now, since then, we've also seen social media become a thing, and we've seen players attacked on social media. We saw Sancho and Rashford getting a load of grief, including racist abuse when they missed penalties for England. We've seen Cristiano Ronaldo get a stick when he winked at Wayne Rooney. We've seen all sorts going on. It's just been an absolute nonsense. So I get it. It happens, and some of it isn't okay. Harry Maguire's had a lot of stick and some of that isn't okay. But I do feel as a Manchester United player, you have to be able to take criticism. You have to be able to at least have your manager shout at you if you're not performing. That is something you've got to be able to cope with. And it worries me a lot that Eric Ten Hag feels like he can't do that. He can't do that with his squad. He can't shout at them because they're not going to be able to handle criticism. Let us know what you think. Do you think that is fair? Do you think it is unfair? Are you slightly concerned that the players can't handle it? Or do you think that it's the modern era that we live in? Let me know what you think. Richard H says there's the criticism, then there's the United tax, so it just becomes 24/7 abuse. Stephanie Griffith says players should be able to handle criticism. They have all these people around them. Perhaps that's the issue. Big Pappy says, bring back the group hugs in the shower. Hello. Tom Hartley says, if you can't handle criticism, you shouldn't be on social media. I'm a bit loath to say that. I understand your point, but I'm a bit loath to say just don't go on it. But I think in terms of the manager, if we just look at the manager, he should be able to criticise the players and shout at them and give them a bit of a what for. He should, after that Galatasaray game, been able to tear strips off him. He should have. Ditto the Crystal Palace game. I don't think a pat on the back and arm around the shoulder always works. And I think when you put in a performance that is absolutely abysmal, you should be called out on it. And I think a lot of the players did. I thought Rasmus Højlund can hold his head high, and a few, one or two others. But by and large, it was a poor performance from Manchester United. And Onana obviously had a stinker, but he weren't alone. He was probably the worst. But there was other players that didn't turn up. It was the same at Crystal Palace the weekend before. Players not turning up. And I think they've got to be able to be criticised by the manager. And I think if you take that away from the manager and you say, you can't shout at him, you're on a hiding to nothing and we're not going to get anywhere. What's the next story? We've got another one here. I think it's a toxic mess. Erik Ten Hag has endless problems, but Man United have a way out of toxic mess. The Dutch coach is under pressure due to Man United's form, with the uncertainty over the club sale and a litany of off-the-field issues further impeding the club's progress. But apparently, there is a way out of it all. If you look here, it says, as the Manchester United hierarchy reflected on yet another defeat, there was scarcely a thought of blaming Erik Ten Hag. That means they certainly won't be making any knee-jerk decisions about his future. United are committed to the Dutch coach. The overriding feeling is that Erik Ten Hag has faced an almost impossible number of injuries to go with more off-field issues in a short period that almost any manager has ever faced. I agree. Listen, we should beat Galatasaray with the team we put out. We should beat Crystal Palace and Brighton with the team put out. But let's not forget, he has had a ridiculous amount of injuries. We spoke about the left-back position a minute ago. Tyrone Malassia's injured. Luke Shaw's injured. You bring in Sergio Reguilon, he gets injured. You've also had Lisandro Martinez out long-term. Rafael Varane in and out of the team. It hasn't been great. He has had a lot to cope with. You've got the Jadon Sancho situation, which... Okay, you can argue that manager might be partly responsible, but I think a lot of it comes down to player. You've had the Anthony situation. Again, that's not an injury, but it's a player unavailable who would be getting picked if he was. So it's not been easy. Plus, you've got the whole takeover thing, which is a distraction. You like to think that it's not, but it must be to a certain degree. I've always wondered how much of a distraction it is. But I think... looking at it and looking how much it's dragged on, it's been 11 months since the strategic alternatives. It's got to be something of a distraction. It really has. Let us know what you think. Hit that like button as well, people. Let's get to at least 200 likes. We've got 149. We're almost there. Man1 DJ says, Ten Hag got his transfers. Are some people dumb saying he didn't get his signing? Right, okay. Ten Hag did get signings. But let's not forget his priorities, his first choice, and what he ended up with. Did he always get his first choice? Really? I think Harry Kane was one of his first choices. I like Rasmus Højlund. I'm glad we got him. Rasmus Højlund probably wasn't. He got Rasmus Højlund. He wanted Frenkie de Jong. He didn't get Frenkie de Jong. In the end, we got Casemiro. Again, another good player. But 31 now, people are already questioning it. He wanted Frenkie de Jong. Frenkie de Jong was his guy. It was like, I want this player. It was obvious that he wanted him. He didn't get him. There was also talk of other players he wanted. Julian Timber was another one apparently he wanted. Didn't get him. So there's been a few players where, Rabiot was another one he wanted, didn't get him. There's been a few players that he's wanted that he hasn't got. So I get it. I get the idea that he's been backed and he's got, to a certain degree, and he's got transfers. He's brought in a lot of players, but he's also ended up buying a lot of his second and third choice players when he hasn't been able to get his first choice. So it's not all been plain sailing for Erik Ten Hag as Manchester United manager. Sarah Malin says, no manager gets all the signings they want, though. They don't get all the signings they want. I'm not saying that, but they usually get one or two of the first ones. I don't think he has had many of them. And I also think the injuries as well, when you look at it, is another issue he's got to deal with, plus the off-the-field issues. So it's a culmination of things. Whitterbird says Sesko as well is another player. Stephanie Griffith says Gakpo, Nunes, Timber. Yeah, we're linked well. Kim Min-jae, that was a player I couldn't remember. Dara Rafferty says he wanted Kim Min-jae. He did. He wanted Kim Min-jae. If we'd have had Kim Min-jae now, it'd be a different story. It really would. We're missing him. Because you look at the injuries we've got, you think, we had Kim Min-jae in that defence. Happy days, but we haven't, so we have to cope accordingly. And I'm not hating on Johnny Evans, but that's where we're at, innit? Instead of getting Kim Min-jae, you end up bringing in someone like Johnny Evans because you haven't got the money. Even Sofian Amrabat I think it was a loan. Couldn't afford to buy him. Listen, I'm going to wrap it up there. Thanks everyone who got involved in the comments and the chat. We got to 164 likes. Didn't quite make that 200. Disappointing. Never mind. We'll go again. We're going to be back later on with Off the Bar. We'll also have the preview for the Brentford game as well. So make sure you are hitting like, share and subscribe. I'm Jay Motty. This has been The Paper Talk. Don't forget as well, we've got the event coming up in Dublin. I almost forgot then. In Dublin, we will be here, we'll be there, I should say. Myself, Adam McCullough, Stephen Howson, Joe Smith and John O'Shea as well. So make sure you are getting involved in that. If you can get over to Dublin for the 28th of December, we'll see you there. Thanks for watching.